Hey, Bright Suns, everybody. I'm back here in this second episode of Board Game Cantina, where I'm going to take the footage that we brought in during the previous segment and we're going to synchronize it because we have multi-camera setup. So down here in my project window, I've got a couple of different folders, which Adobe Premiere refers to as bins. And one of them is for all of my footage, and one of them is for my audio that came from my mixer. I got clips in here from our cocktail discussion with our guest, Aaron Jacobs. I've got some footage from our kitchen segment, which is not shot with multiple cameras. We just literally take our phones in the kitchen and film each other making cocktails. And then we've got another multi-camera setup of the gameplay portion of the day where we played through the Clone Wars with Aaron. So to make it interesting, I'll start with the gameplay portion and I'll synchronize all that together so you can see how we would take as many as 4 cameras and sync them together with the audio from the mixer. And we're going to produce what's called a sequence. And the idea is I create a sequence for my gameplay, a sequence for the cocktail discussion, which happens after that, where we're sort of reflecting back on how was that. And then I'll edit together the kitchen segment. And then I've got 3 different sequences, and I can bring those together into yet another sequence, which kind of represents the overall show. And I can then start to cut all of those together, put in my titles, and then finish it up. So for today, let's just grab these 4 individual video clips, which are cameras 1, 2, 3, and 4. I've got a left, center, and a right camera, and then camera 4 is our overhead view. And then I'll grab my audio of the gameplay portion. And now that those are all selected, I'm going to right click and I'm going to pick Create Multi-Camera Source Sequence. And up here where it's asking for a name, it usually wants to grab the name of the first video clip and append that to the beginning of the name of the sequence, which is annoying. So I'll just pick custom and I'll have it, I just call it multicam discussion. That'll be the name of this sequence. And then it's asking, how do we want to synchronize it? You can actually do it using in and out points. You can use special time code. We want to use audio, and that's selected here. And then the most important other thing on this dialog is we want to select enumerate cameras. That's how we're going to be able to switch back and forth between the different views we want. So I hit OK, and then go for a walk, go make a sandwich. It's actually really fast. It'll process it for a moment, and then it'll render out that sequence with the name that we gave it. Okay, there we go. I did cut out some of the wait time so you wouldn't have to sit there and stare at a screen while nothing was happening, but it really only took a minute or two. And that's pretty good considering it's probably almost an hour and a half, I think, of gameplay when we were playing through with Aaron. So now I have a sequence down here in my project panel that's called Multicam Discussion. That's the name that we asked it for. And then it's taken the clips that I put into that sequence and it's moved them to this special folder called Processed Clips. So if we ever need to get back at them again, they're still there. They've just been moved. So they're no longer up here in these folders that I had set up. Sorry, there's the gameplay folder. It's now empty. So now that I have this sequence, I can bring this over onto my timeline. I'm just going to right click on it and I'm going to say new sequence from clip. It's basically treating this collection of 4 clips plus my audio as though it's all one clip, but it's still going to keep them separate enough that we can cut around between the different cameras. So I'll hit that, brings it over onto the timeline, and it's defaulting to showing the first camera, which is camera 1. That's the sort of left-hand view of what's going on here. And if I just, while my playhead is on the clip, if I just hit the number 2 on my keyboard, it switches to camera 2. If I hit the number 3, it switches to camera 3. And then camera 4 is the overhead view. And we're going to need to do a little bit of work on these clips to correct for things like we got a little bit of a horizon issue here. That happens every time because I'm using a teleprompter, and the way my phone, which is what I use to film this center view, sits in that teleprompter, it's very hard to tell when I've got the angle just right. So it's always a little bit messed up, and Premiere makes it very easy to correct for all of that. The most obvious correction I'll have to make is this overhead view of the table is rotated 90 degrees from where we would want it. So we'll be able to fix that. And where I can, I like to make as many of those corrections before I start cutting as possible. But for today, just wanted to give you that quick view of how it looks when we get everything loaded in and synchronized. And if I've done it right, then it will have lined up the audio from the mixer, which is completely separate from any of these camera views, so that the sound is synced perfectly, and then muted all 3 of the other audio tracks, which are all still embedded in here. So what I'm going to do is hit the space bar and start the playback, and I'll zoom in on the video window, and we'll just check the sync and make sure it looks like the words are actually coming out of our mouths. I think it's as simple as that. Tastes bitter.
Tastes bitter. We won, but at what cost?
So that looks like it's pretty well synced.
Next.
It's my turn, huh? And then I'll have a look at my other views, just do a quick check.
Yeah.
Or did you do your...
Invade planets.
We haven't done the, yeah.
Okay.
So should I do that now?
Yeah. I've got a C-stand visible in the shot. This is also another good discussion point. This is what's holding that overhead view camera. And so I'll need to zoom in and crop that out of the shot so that by the time you're watching the finished show, you'll never be any the wiser, hopefully. But those are all sort of a handful of examples of the kinds of things that we do every time we bring this material in. Let me have a look at the opposite view. This is another one where I'll zoom in and I'll crop out anything that's not of interest.
This is the last card on the villain deck.
Yep, so that's looking like that is synced. And then there's no lip sync to worry about in the overhead view because you can't see anybody's mouths. So as long as it's more or less lined up like the others are, then we're in good shape. So that's all we need for today. And then I'll go ahead and tee up our next episode where we're going to get in and start doing some of these corrections, and we'll start cutting on the timeline. Thanks for watching. May the force be with you.